Welcome back to the channel, everybody, and today is another video in my 2023 offseason prediction series, and we're covering the Green Bay Packers. This is before any true decision by Aaron Rodgers has been made. I don't know when that's going to happen, and I just wanted to get this video out. So if you're watching this and Aaron Rodgers is either not on the team or is retired, I recorded this before that happened. But make sure to like, thumbs up the video, and subscribe if you haven't already so you don't miss any more videos in this series. And I've got the entire playlist ready for you guys on the ones I've done already and the ones that I've done after this. So Green Bay, just talked about Aaron Rodgers. That's the biggest story for them, right? What's their quarterback going to do? Is he staying? Is he going? Are they going to rebuild and keep Jordan Love? Are they going to trade away Jordan Love for some draft capital and rebuild that team? Who are they bringing back? There's so much going on in Green Bay. And I'm sure once the Super Bowl's over and everything, they're going to have a much clearer picture on what's happening. But I can only go based upon what I see in the salary cap management using overthecap.com. Great resource for that. And it doesn't seem like there's much of an out for Aaron Rodgers unless there's some wild renegotiation that he does, kind of like what Peyton Manning did with the Colts, that allows him to leave and go somewhere else. So I have to do this based upon the assumption Aaron Rodgers is staying in Green Bay and is going to play, which I'm not completely opposed to anyway, because outside of that losing streak they had, they figured it out towards the end of the year. They just put themselves in a terrible position where they couldn't slip up at any point once they got to, I think it was, they were 4-8. Were they 4-8 and 5 or 5? Once they were 4-8, I think it was, they left no room for error. And then in the last game of the year was the error against the team that they knew was going to play hard. It was not the team you wanted to go in and play against. Detroit was just way too strong this year and only getting better as the year went on. I'm not convinced that this means that they're on the downswing. I think that once their young players started to figure it out, it gave them a much better idea of where their holes actually were, where they can afford to cut guys, where they can afford to pick guys up, re-sign guys, etc. So it kind of made this a little bit easier than I was anticipating, which is weird to say because Green Bay, if I said this back in November, they were like the team that was in the most trouble. You thought. You're like, oh my God, this team's going to have to rebuild. They're going to stink for a long time. I don't think that's necessarily true. They're in a much tougher division than what they're used to, but I don't think it's necessarily true. We'll start with the head coach. So their head coach is Matt LaFleur. He's been there ever since Mike McCarthy got let go. I think it was in 2018. And there's been rumors of issues with Aaron Rodgers, which I don't really ever bought into. You know, the media has been anything but fair to A-Rod, especially over the last couple of years. You know, he is the MVP of the Demic and all. But I think LaFleur, he comes from that Shanahan coaching style, play calling, play design. And this year was really a difficult year for them because they had so much turnover at key positions, losing Devontae Adams, of course. And you look at some of their offensive ranks, keep in mind that they did a lot of this stuff once their year was kind of over already. They were kind of middle of the pack in everything. They didn't execute well in the red zone. They had a lot of drops early in the year with guys like Christian Watson. But then once they really started to pick it up, that's when things got really good for them. And again, that middle of the season was what really killed them. And then once they figured everything out, that's why I'm not really overly concerned, because I think that they can improve, 5 to 6 spots on all of these categories, moving forward, of course, other than like turnovers and sacks, because that would make them number one in those. But they can improve so much on all of these statistical categories with just, a little piece here and there now, because they've got that year under their belt. The guys have worked out all those young rookie hiccups that they've had. The issue for me is I'm looking at the defense, and they're the most uninventive defense I've ever seen. It's unbelievable how uninventive they were on defense, running really basic cover 3 zones. It was like watching a high school team try to play defense in the NFL. And it hurt them. They drafted poorly. I mean, they drafted a guy, Quay Walker, who, big baby. They drafted Devontae Wyatt, who barely played. It just wasn't like, I don't understand how their defensive coordinator had a job, to be honest with you. They have some good, talented players. They lost Gary at the end of the year, but he wasn't lighting the world on fire. They didn't really have, they Preston Smith, who makes a lot of money, but he wasn't really that much of an option. Kingsley Enagbare had to step up towards the end of the year, but he's a fifth round pick? Slow, not really explosive. So once they lose a couple of guys, they were in a lot of trouble, and Jair Alexander can only do so much. They had a great breakout year from Rudy Ford. They had, Rasul Douglas was back. He's playing okay. Devondre Campbell hasn't really recreated what he did that first year with the Packers. It's just they need a new identity on the defensive side of the ball. They need some more inventive play calling and play design, and just be brought up to speed, because their defense is just like, look at the rushing yards, 26 in rushing yards. That's inexcusable when you spend 2 first-round picks on guys who are right up the middle of the field, the inside linebacker and an interior defensive lineman, and you're 26th in yards, 22nd in touchdowns. That is horrendous. That's absolutely horrendous. And I know you guys, they're losing games, so they're playing from behind a lot, but there should have been way more ability to get off the field with the amount of money that they have spent on that front seven. Between Devondre Campbell, first-round pick Quay Walker, Kenny Clark, Jaron Reed, first-round pick Devontae Wyatt, Rashawn Gary, Kingsley Enagbare, Preston Smith, Chris Barnes. They had Isaiah McDuffie. They had so much invested, and they couldn't get it together. So that's something they probably should look into improving going forward. But they've also invested so much in it, so how much more do you want to invest? You pretty much put yourself in a position where you have to let these guys develop and figure it out together, or else you're just throwing away. Basically, you're just throwing away Devontae Adams for nothing, because you used Devontae Adams and with trades and everything, got those two guys who you need to play well. And Quay Walker needs a big maturity boost. Him walking down that tunnel in that last game, throwing literally a tantrum. That's an issue, man. That is an issue. And that's something that Matt LaFleur needs to get under control. He needs to get these young guys and have them start acting like young men rather than children, because they're not in high school anymore where they could be throwing fits and slamming their arms up and down, walking down a tunnel, sulking. Just not, no. Sorry, no. So here's one of their biggest issues, is that they're starting the offseason minus $16.2 million over the cap. That comes from the contract that they gave to Elton Jenkins, the contract extension he received. So we're got to navigate through this cap. There's not a lot of guys that I'm looking to bring back. Despite what Aaron Rodgers said about Alan Lazard and Robert Tonyan, I'm not necessarily looking to bring either one of those guys back. Keyshawn Nixon is the only one I'm looking to bring back. $1.5 million cap hit. He was a real difference maker for them second half of the season, and Aaron Rodgers, keeping him around, I think is a really good investment for this team because of how dynamic he is. But again, we're assuming that Aaron Rodgers is sticking around, so we're going to restructure Kenny Clark and Jair Alexander, and we're getting almost $21 million off of those restructures. We're going to trade Jordan Love for $2.3 million. Hope you can get, a second-round pick from the New Orleans Saints or from the Washington Commanders, perhaps. I don't know. And then you're cutting Preston Smith for $10.6 million and Adrian Amos for $5.6 million. So we're freeing up quite a bit of cap room here to have some sort of flexibility when it comes to free agency and signing draft picks. There's a whole lot of mock drafts I've done with Green Bay. I had them trading up in one of them, trying to land a guy on the offense and on the defense, like a receiver and a tight end, to mix in with like someone like Brian Branch, who has all this versatility that they can execute on defense, but they need a new defensive identity. But this is keeping their two best defensive players. You've extended them. You've kicked that can down the road for them. And now you're opening yourself up to be able to make maybe a couple of moves. And maybe you restructure a couple of things with Aaron Rodgers to open up a little bit more cap space. There's a whole lot of things they could be doing moving forward. But these seemed like the most logical moves, on the assumption, of course, that Aaron Rodgers is sticking around. Your Jordan Love's not going to stick around to Green Bay. Pick one. So with my infinite ability and wisdom, I freed up $22.6 million, and that brings us over, of course, to what their needs are. And there's the quarterback of the future. With Jordan Love now traded, you got to figure out who that is going to be. Are you keeping Aaron Rodgers and going with Jordan Love? Then that problem is solved. If not, you need to figure out who your next quarterback is going to be once Aaron Rodgers is done. You also need a third wide receiver. Christian Watson, Romeo Doubs look like they're going to be a good 1-2 punch, but you need a third guy. You need a third guy that's going to have a different type of skill set, different physical abilities and physical traits. You need a tight end. Mercedes Lewis is 39 years old. He's mostly a blocking guy. Robert Tunyon's a free agent, but he hasn't really been reliable. Maybe you have to look into getting a new tight end. Maybe there's a tight end in the draft that could fill both of those spots for you for the long term. Then you need offensive line. What's going on with David Bakhtiari? Who's your left tackle of the future? You got Elton Jenkins, who's your left guard. Who else is solidified on that offensive line? You don't really know. And that's something that you should probably figure out. Zach Tom has a lot of versatility. You have Sean Ryan. You have John Runyon. So you could get some semblance of a right tackle and an interior offensive lineman out of that group. But then, is Josh Myers really going to be the center long term? Is Bakhtiari going to stick around, like I said? Got to figure that out. Then you got the edge rusher. You need something opposite of Rashawn Gary. That's a true number one. Kingsley Nagbari is good situationally, but I wouldn't want him to be the guy getting number one edge rusher snaps. He just doesn't have the tools. He doesn't have the pass rushing skills to go mix in with everything else. And then you need a safety. You need somebody at that back end. Darnell Savage did a lot of good work playing closer to the line of scrimmage in like a nickel role. So maybe you want to go out and get a guy like Brian Branch who can just be a center fielder. Maybe you're looking at guys in the second round like Christopher Smith who could play that role. But you need to figure out that role, especially because Amos is going to need to be let go because you need the cap space and to do all these other things to fill out all these other needs. But looking into free agency, and I think that they can snipe a couple of really good guys in this draft. And I looked at Juju Smith-Schuster, who's coming out of Kansas City after his 1-year stint there. He could come in and be the slot guy in Green Bay. Put him out there. He's got some experience. He's a bit of a, mental case. But I think he's somebody that Aaron Rodgers, I think, would really be able to adapt to and be able to put into the offense, get the ball out of his hands, Juju after the catch. And I don't think he's going to really command a big contract. He didn't command one coming out of Pittsburgh. He didn't really do anything in Kansas City to command a big contract this upcoming season. So why not just go grab him and you get a guy who has some experience, who can be a wide receiver 3, and now you can maybe spend your first round pick on something else. You don't necessarily need to go after a Quentin Johnson or a Jordan Addison now. Then you got Dan Arnold, who's definitely a receiving tight end. But again, somebody out there who can go run routes, catch the ball. That's cheap. $2 million cap hit. I really like the idea of that. You get two guys that Aaron Rodgers can throw the ball to, that are reliable catching the football, that have some experience, that know how to be in an NFL game, know how to be in an NFL film room, and can actually probably pass on some type of knowledge to some of these younger guys. And also when you sign Dan Arnold, you still leave yourself open to maybe if you want to draft Michael Mayer in the first round, you can go and still do that because Michael Mayer is more of a well-rounded tight end compared to Dan Arnold. And then Brandon Parker, $3 million cap hit, swing tackle. Build in some of that offensive line depth that once you started to get injuries, you really started to lose that depth. But you bring in a guy who can, be that number 3 offensive tackle. Again, got experience, has been a starter before. And when he has started, he has actually played okay, had his ups and downs, obviously, which is why he hasn't been able to stick anywhere, but still has shown some really good ability, and he can be a replacement level guy, a guy that can come in and fill in for an injury for a week or two, and you'll be relatively comfortable with that. So that leaves $11.6 million to fill out the rest of the roster and sign your draft picks. I think it's a really good number. You can sign some vets in that third wave of free agency going into training camp for the vet minimums. Some undrafted guys you can bring in. You can really work out some deals with that amount of money, and you can always, cut a guy here or there depending on what you turn out in the draft. Free up $1 million here, $1 million there. It's a good number to be sitting at going in to the draft. And then their draft strategy, this is pretty much what I have laid out for them if they go along with what I was doing. Michael Mayer or Darnell Washington. One of those top 2 guys should be the tight end for you going forward. If you're using a first round pick on Michael Mayer, cool. Then get a safety. Are you going to take Brian Branch in the first round instead of Michael Mayer? Is that going to be an option for you at all? Then in the second round, you really got to make sure that you can commit and get Darnell Washington, who many people are also saying is getting first round bust. You might have to be prepared to miss out on him and maybe go with a Dalton Kincaid or a Luke Musgrave instead and hope that you can get what you were looking for out of a number 1 tight end, because you will, for all likelihood, be drafting your tight end 1 in this draft. And then the pass rush we brought up before. Getting another guy on the opposite side of Rashawn Gary, who's your 3-down pass rusher, edge rusher. Maybe you get somebody who's a complement to Kingsley and Agbar, so you unroll them situationally. Maybe you put 3 of them on the field at one time and mix it up a bit. But that also comes with what I've been saying from the beginning of this video, is that you need an inventive, risk-taking, creative defensive mind running the show on that side of the ball, which is not Joe Barry. I don't know if Joe Barry got fired. I thought I saw something that he might. He should if he isn't, and they need to get somebody in there who can modernize this, because that type of defense, it's just not working. It just wasn't working for them, and it was making things harder on the offense. And you can't make things harder on your offense. You got to make things easier on your offense. And I think that this is a really good way to use their draft capital and this, what I'll call an anomaly of a bad season, really to their advantage to get some quality guys, because there are some really good quality safeties. There's some good quality tight ends. And the pass rushers, the edge rushers in this class, it's a really deep class. There's a lot of different types of guys. There could be a lot of them that go in the first 2 days. There could be like 6 that go in the first round. 6 or 7 guys that go in the first round alone. So there's a good baker's dozen of edge rushers, and you got to figure out a way to get one of those to put into that defense to really get some depth on that edge rusher, because you're going to need to go after these high-powered offenses that are being built in your division. Minnesota's, Detroit's, even Chicago's, you're going to expect to see a lot of focus on them improving on the offensive side of the ball further. They were actually much better on offense this year than many people expected, so you got to be prepared to deal with that. And there it is, my offseason predictions for the Green Bay Packers. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. Thumbs up the video and subscribe to the channel. Let's grow this channel up, get through those algos, and I will see you guys with the next video with the next team next time.